Amara, a struggling college waitress, accidentally humiliates Adrian Blackwell, the ruthless billionaire heir known as the Wolf of Wall Street. Instead of destroying her, he shocks everyone by announcing she will be his wife within a week. But Amara doesn't know his real motive. He needs a bride to inherit his family empire. Her face matches the sketch of the girl who saved his life as a boy, and his obsession with her is bordering on dangerous. She's thrown into a glittering world of wealth, enemies, and secrets, where love feels like both a crown and a trap.
Welcome to another episode of Ever After. Kindly comment where you are listening from and subscribe so you don't miss out on our next episode.
Chapter 1. The Coffee Spill. The cafe was packed, every table crowded with executives in suits and students hunched over laptops. Amara balanced a tray of steaming cups as she squeezed between tables, her heart pounding with the fear of losing her job again. "Careful, Amara," her manager hissed from behind the counter. "Don't mess this one up." She turned the corner and crashed directly into a man stepping out of the private lounge. Coffee spilled down his tailored suit, dripping like molten fire onto crisp white silk. The tray clattered to the ground. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," Amara stammered, scrambling to grab napkins. Her hands shook as she dabbed at the expensive fabric. The man didn't move. He stood still, his presence consuming the space. Tall, broad-shouldered, with obsidian dark eyes that burned like embers. His face was carved perfection, strong jaw, cruel mouth, but his expression was cold, dangerously unreadable. The cafe went silent. Even the manager stopped mid-sentence, color draining from her face. Amara swallowed hard. "I didn't mean—" "Do you know," the man said softly, his voice velvet over steel, "that this suit costs more than your entire year's salary?" Her cheeks burned. She straightened, forcing herself to meet his gaze. "Then maybe you shouldn't stand where people are working." A ripple of shock passed through the crowd. No one ever spoke back to Adrian Blackwell, the youngest billionaire in the city, ruthless heir to Blackwell Enterprises. His lips curved, not in anger, but in something darker, a smirk. "You have courage," he murmured, "or stupidity. I haven't decided yet." He stepped closer, his cologne, smoke, and spice wrapping around her. His eyes lingered on her face, tracing every line as if memorizing it. Then, with terrifying calm, he said, "You'll pay for this, miss." Amara, was it? In ways you can't imagine. Before she could reply, he turned and walked out, leaving silence, and her racing heart, behind. Chapter 2. The Warning. Later that evening, Amara's best friend Nina waved her phone in shock. "Amara, look at this." On the screen was a headline flashing across every news site. "Adrian Blackwell, the Wolf of Wall Street, spotted at Midnight Cafe. Mystery waitress causes scene." Amara froze. Her picture, grainy but clear, showed her standing pale and wide-eyed beside him. Nina gasped. "Girl, do you realize what this means? You just crossed paths with him. The man who fires people for breathing wrong. The one every rival fears, the one—" "I don't care who he is," Amara cut in, though her stomach twisted. "I'll never see him again. It was just an accident." But even as she spoke, her phone buzzed with an unknown number. She hesitated before answering. "Miss Amara," the voice on the other end purred. Deep, dark, familiar. Adrian Blackwell. "You're wrong," he said softly. "You'll be seeing me again. Very soon." The line went dead. Amara dropped the phone, her hands trembling. She had no idea that with one spilled cup of coffee, she had stepped into a gilded trap she could never escape. Chapter 3. The Invitation. The next morning, Amara walked into the cafe with heavy steps, her nerves buzzing from the phone call that haunted her all night. She hadn't slept. Adrian Blackwell's voice, low, smooth, commanding, kept replaying in her head. "You'll be seeing me again. Very soon." She tried convincing herself it was a bluff. Billionaires didn't waste time on ordinary waitresses. They lived in mansions, not coffee shops. He'd forget her by sunrise. Right? Her fragile hope shattered the moment she entered the cafe. Everyone was staring at her. Customers whispered behind their cups. Her manager stood stiff as a soldier, cheeks flushed, wringing her apron like a nervous habit. "What's going on?" Amara asked, her voice cautious. Her manager thrust a trembling finger toward the corner booth, the private lounge Adrian had occupied yesterday. He was there. Again. Adrian Blackwell sat like he owned the entire place. And perhaps he did. Dressed in another immaculate suit, his dark hair gleamed under the cafe's golden lights. Two men in sharp black coats stood behind him, bodyguards who looked more like predators than employees. Amara's heart plummeted. The manager leaned close, whispering urgently, "He's been waiting for you since we opened." She blinked. "For me? Why?" "Go," the manager hissed, "before he ruins us all." Amara forced her feet to move, though every step felt like walking toward a cage. Adrian's eyes tracked her approach, calm yet piercing, as though she were prey he had already caught. When she reached the booth, she kept her chin high. "What do you want from me?" The corner of his mouth lifted. "Sit." The word was not a suggestion. It was a command, smooth, effortless, irresistible. Against her better judgment, she slid into the seat across from him. Adrian steepled his fingers, studying her in silence for a moment too long. "You fascinate me." Amara blinked. "I spilled coffee on you." "And yet," he murmured, eyes narrowing, "you didn't cower. No one speaks to me the way you did. Not my board, not my rivals, not even my so-called friends, but you." His gaze softened into something more dangerous than anger, curiosity. "You looked at me as if I were just a man, not a monster." She crossed her arms. "That's because I don't care about your money or your reputation. You're just arrogant." Instead of offense, his smirk deepened. "Arrogant. I've been called worse." He leaned forward, lowering his voice until it brushed against her skin like silk. "Tell me, Amara, do you believe in fate?" Her throat tightened. "No." "Good." He slid a sleek black envelope across the table. Gold lettering gleamed against the dark paper. "Then you'll see this for what it is, an opportunity." She picked it up reluctantly, opening the seal with trembling fingers. Inside was a single card, an invitation, embossed in gold foil. Blackwell Enterprises Gala. Saturday, 8 p.m. Guest of honor, Amara Vance. Her head shot up. "What? No. This must be some kind of mistake." Adrian's smile was lethal, slow, triumphant. "No mistake. The world will soon know your name. And when it does, there will be no turning back." Her pulse thundered in her ears. She wanted to run, to scream, to laugh at the insanity of it. But the way Adrian looked at her, steady, unyielding, told her the truth. This was not a game. It was the beginning of something she couldn't escape. Chapter 4. The Gala. Amara's hands trembled as she adjusted the borrowed gown Nina had forced her into. The dress, silken midnight blue, with a neckline that made her blush, felt like stolen royalty against her skin. She had argued with Nina for hours, insisting she couldn't go, that Adrian Blackwell must be playing some cruel joke. But when sleek black cars appeared outside her tiny apartment that evening, she realized there was no choice. His men had escorted her with quiet, intimidating efficiency, as if she were already claimed property. Now, standing at the entrance of the Blackwell Enterprises Gala, she felt the weight of hundreds of eyes on her. Chandeliers glittered above the ballroom, spilling light across gowns that cost more than her rent for a year. Waiters glided with champagne trays, cameras flashed like fireworks. She didn't belong here. She wanted to vanish. "Breathe," Nina had whispered before she left. "Hold your head high. Don't let them see you're scared." But fear was all Amara felt as a ripple of silence cut through the room. She knew before she turned who had arrived: Adrian Blackwell. He strode into the ballroom like a storm contained in human form, commanding every gaze, In his black suit, tailored to perfection, he looked untouchable, ruthless, regal, lethal. Whispers rose like wind, the wolf of Wall Street, the untouchable heir, the most dangerous man alive. And then his eyes found hers. The crowd blurred. Amara's chest tightened, caught in the burn of his gaze. With deliberate steps, he crossed the floor, each movement echoing like destiny. When he reached her, he did something that stole the breath from every person in the room. He took her hand. The music dimmed, cameras flashed, gasps rippled. "Ladies and gentlemen," Adrian's voice carried effortlessly, smooth and commanding. "Tonight is not merely about business. Tonight I present to you someone far more valuable than any empire." Amara froze. No, he wouldn't. He pulled her closer, his hand firm at her waist. "This is Amara Vance," he announced. "My future wife." The room exploded. Flashes blinded her. Journalists shouted questions. Women gasped. Men muttered. The crowd surged like a wave, scandal rippling through every corner. Amara's blood turned cold. She yanked her hand back, her voice trembling. "What are you doing?" she hissed under the noise. Adrian leaned down, lips brushing her ear, his words silk wrapped in steel. "Keeping a promise and making sure you can't run." Her heart hammered, trapped between fury and fear. The world around her blurred, the champagne glasses, the laughter, the envy in women's eyes. All she could see was Adrian standing like a conqueror at her side. And for the first time, Amara realized the truth. Her life was no longer her own. Chapter 5. The Aftermath. The ballroom buzzed like a hive of hornets. Whispers, camera flashes, and speculative laughter filled every corner, but Amara barely heard any of it. Her ears rang with one unbearable sentence echoing again and again. "This is Amara Vance, my future wife." Her body felt numb as Adrian's hand pressed lightly at her back, guiding her through the sea of glittering gowns and tuxedos. His grip wasn't rough, but it was unyielding. She felt like a doll being displayed, a crown jewel he had plucked from nowhere and dared the world to question. Some faces gawked with open disbelief. Others sneered, lips curling with disdain. Amara caught fragments of poisonous whispers. "A waitress, in his circle. She's nothing. He'll discard her in a week. Look at her dress, probably borrowed. She doesn't belong." Every word was a dagger, but none cut deeper than Adrian's silence beside her. He looked forward with the calm of a king, utterly unaffected by the chaos he'd ignited. Finally, after endless introductions, he ushered her into a side corridor away from the prying cameras. The golden light of the ballroom dimmed into shadow. The instant the doors closed, Amara tore herself free. "What the hell was that?" Her voice cracked, shaking with fury. How dare you announce something like that without asking me?" Adrian didn't flinch. He removed his cufflinks slowly, placing them on a nearby table as though her anger were background noise. His stillness infuriated her more. "You can't just decide my life," she snapped, stepping closer. "I am not your property. You don't even know me." Finally, he looked at her, eyes dark and burning. "Don't I?" she faltered, thrown off by the strange edge in his tone. Adrian closed the distance between them, his height casting her in shadow. "I know you're braver than you realize. I know you stare the world in the face even when it tries to crush you. I know you'd rather starve than sell your dignity. And..." His jaw tightened, his voice lowering until it brushed against her skin. "I know you're the girl who saved me once." Amara blinked. "What are you talking about?" But he didn't answer. Instead, he stepped back, mask sliding over his features again. Cold, controlled, untouchable. "This arrangement isn't about you, Amara. It's about me. About what I need. You are necessary." Her chest tightened. Necessary? For what? His lips curved, but it wasn't a smile. To inherit an empire, one must silence their enemies. Tonight, I silenced mine. No one will dare question me. Not when I've claimed the one thing no rival can touch. And what's that? She demanded, her voice trembling. His gaze pinned her, merciless. You. Silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. Amara's pulse thundered in her ears. She wanted to scream, to slap him, to run, but her body wouldn't move. Adrian leaned closer, his words a vow she couldn't escape. From this night forward, Amara Vance, you belong to me, and the world will never let you forget it. Tars Chapter 6. The First Trap. By the time Adrian released her back into the glittering chaos of the gala, Amara felt like the floor was tilting beneath her feet. She told herself she would leave, slip out the side doors, run into the night, forget all of this madness. But the world didn't give her that chance. As soon as she stepped back into the ballroom, a wall of flashing lights hit her. Paparazzi had already stormed the place, their cameras clicking like gunfire, microphones shoved forward. Miss Vance, how did you meet Adrian Blackwell? Was this a secret romance? Do you think you're qualified to be the Blackwell bride? Amara flinched, her voice drying up. The press pressed closer, hungry for answers. Before she could speak, Adrian slid an arm around her waist. His touch was possessive, his gaze a shield of cold fire. No questions tonight, he said smoothly, his voice cutting like steel wrapped in velvet. This woman is under my protection. The words echoed like chains. Under his protection. The journalists obeyed, reluctantly, but their pens scratched furiously, their cameras flashing, their eyes gleaming with scandal. The story had already been written. Amara's chest tightened with panic. She wasn't ready for this. She hadn't agreed to this. Adrian bent down, his lips close to her ear, so low only she could hear. Smile, Amara, or they'll eat you alive. Her hands trembled, but she forced a brittle smile. The crowd roared with excitement, convinced they were witnessing a fairy tale instead of a prison being built around her. Hours later, when the gala finally ended, Adrian's car whisked her away from the glittering ballroom into the silent streets of the city. She sat rigid in the leather seat, her mind spinning. Why me? She demanded at last, her voice hoarse. Out of every woman in that ballroom, you could have chosen anyone. Why humiliate me like this? Adrian's eyes flicked toward her, unreadable in the shadows. Because you're the only one I can't buy. That makes you dangerous. Amara's stomach twisted. You don't even know me. His lips curved in a ghost of a smile. Don't I? You'll see soon enough. The car stopped outside her small apartment building, and Adrian opened the door for her with old-world courtesy that somehow felt like mockery. Good night, fiancé, he said smoothly. The word made her skin prickle. She stepped out quickly, desperate to escape his presence. But before she closed the door, his voice reached her again, quiet, but absolute. From this moment on, Amara, the world believes you are mine. And once the world believes a story, there's no undoing it. The door clicked shut, the car pulling away into the night. Amara stood frozen on the sidewalk, her chest tight, her heart breaking into panic. Already her phone buzzed, dozens of missed calls, hundreds of messages, social media exploding with her face, headlines screaming her name. Amara's blood ran cold as she read one. The wolf claims his bride. Who is Amara Vance? There was no going back. She was trapped. Chapter 7. The Mansion. The black car rolled up a long, winding driveway that seemed to go on forever. Amara stared out the window, her breath catching as the mansion came into view. It wasn't a house. It was a palace. White stone walls towered against the night sky, lined with glowing windows. A fountain carved with angels glittered in the moonlight, its spray catching on rose bushes that bloomed even in the chill of spring. She pressed her hands against her knees to stop them from trembling. This wasn't her world. She didn't belong here. The car door opened and Adrian's hand appeared, offering silent assistance. She ignored it, stepping out on her own. He didn't seem offended, only amused. as though her stubbornness was a game. "Welcome home," he said smoothly. Amara stiffened. "This isn't my home." Adrian arched a brow. "For now it is." Two maids approached, bowing slightly, their eyes carefully lowered. They whisked away her small overnight bag before she could protest. Adrian led her through towering doors into a marble foyer that could have been mistaken for a museum. Crystal chandeliers cascaded light across polished floors. Paintings older than her entire family lined the walls. Her sneakers squeaked against the marble. Every step echoed, reminding her how small she was in this kingdom. "You'll be staying here," Adrian said, his voice low but firm. He gestured to the grand staircase. "A suite has been prepared. Whatever you need will be provided." Amara folded her arms tightly across her chest. "I don't want any of this. I want my life back, my job, my apartment, my freedom." Adrian's eyes darkened, but his tone remained calm. "Your life as you knew it no longer exists. The world believes you are mine. That belief cannot be undone. To leave now would be to destroy yourself and those around you." Her stomach twisted. "You're lying." He stepped closer, his presence suffocating and magnetic all at once. "Search the headlines if you doubt me. Your face is everywhere. Your name is on every screen. Enemies you don't even know are already sharpening their knives. Without me, you will not last a day." His words stole the air from her lungs. She hated the truth in them, hated that he had trapped her so perfectly. "You talk as if you're protecting me," she whispered bitterly. "But you're the one who put me in danger." For the first time, his expression flickered, a crack in the armor. Something raw and unspoken passed through his gaze before it hardened again. "You'll understand in time," he said quietly. Then he turned to leave. Before he disappeared into the shadows of his mansion, he paused, his voice echoing back to her. "This cage may glitter, Amara, but it is still a cage. Do not forget that." Alone in the vast marble hall, Amara sank onto the bottom step, her chest tight with fear and fury. She looked around at the chandeliers, the gold, the roses outside. Beautiful, expensive, and utterly suffocating. Chapter 8. The Socialites Attack. The next evening, Amara found herself dressed in a gown she hadn't chosen, jewels she hadn't asked for, and heels that pinched her toes. Adrian's staff had swept her into preparation as though she were a doll, hair pinned, lashes brushed with gold, lips painted crimson. She stared at her reflection in the mirror, hardly recognizing the girl looking back. For a moment, she wondered if Adrian had done it deliberately, transforming her into something the world would accept at his side. But no amount of silk could erase the truth. She was still the girl who waited tables, who counted coins at the end of the month, who never dreamed of fitting in with people like him. When Adrian appeared at her suite door, dressed in his black tailored suit, he studied her without a word. His gaze lingered, unreadable, until finally he said, "You'll do." She bristled. "You'll do?" He could have said she looked beautiful or even decent. Instead, his words were clipped, practical, like he was evaluating an investment. They left together in a car so sleek it purred instead of roared, arriving at a private dinner hosted by one of Adrian's many allies. Allies or rivals, Amara wasn't sure. She was beginning to realize in Adrian's world, the two could be the same. The dining hall was lined with candlelight and glittering crystal. Men in sharp tuxedos and women in gowns of silver and red filled the room, their laughter smooth and practiced. The moment Amara entered, their eyes landed on her like knives. Whispers rose instantly. "Is that her? The waitress? Adrian's fiancée? He must be joking." Amara's cheeks flushed. She tried to stand tall, but the weight of their scrutiny crushed her. Adrian, of course, seemed unbothered. He guided her with a steady hand at her back, seating her at his side at the long banquet table. For a while she remained quiet, sipping water as champagne glasses clinked and the conversation swirled around her. She thought maybe, just maybe, she would survive this evening unnoticed, until the woman in red arrived. Tall, graceful, with eyes like sharpened glass, she glided across the room and leaned close to Adrian's chair. "Adrian," she purred, ignoring Amara entirely. "You didn't tell me you were bringing company." Amara felt her stomach knot. The woman finally turned her gaze on her, a cold smile playing at her lips. "So, you're the famous Amara Vance. Tell me, dear, how does it feel to leap from serving coffee to this?" She gestured at the chandelier-lit room, the expensive table, the power humming in the air. "Overwhelming, isn't it?" Amara froze. Heat rushed to her cheeks, but before she could answer, the woman leaned closer. Her voice was sweet poison. "Enjoy it while it lasts. Adrian doesn't keep his toys for long." Laughter tinkled down the table. Several guests smirked, their eyes gleaming with cruel amusement. Amara's chest tightened. Anger, humiliation, the sting of not belonging. Before she could speak, a shadow fell across the table. Adrian. His voice was smooth, but his eyes were knives. "Careful, Vivian," he said softly. "My fiancé is not your entertainment." The room silenced instantly. Vivian's smile faltered, but she recovered quickly. "Of course, Adrian. I meant no offense." He leaned closer, his words ice. "And yet, you managed to offend me." The table trembled under the weight of his authority. For the first time, Amara saw fear flicker in Vivian's eyes. Adrian reached across the table, taking Amara's hand in his. His grip was warm, firm, almost protective. He lifted it slightly, as if daring anyone to question him. "She belongs here more than anyone at this table," he said. Gasps rippled, whispers surged, but no one dared answer. Adrian Blackwell had spoken. Amara sat frozen, her hand still in his, her heart thundering. For a moment, she forgot her humiliation, forgot the venom of the socialites. All she felt was the strange safety of Adrian's presence, a man both cage and shield, and that terrified her more than their cruelty ever could. Chapter 9. The Hidden Pain. The ride home from the dinner was silent. Amara kept her eyes fixed on the city lights flashing past the window, trying to ignore the phantom heat of Adrian's hand still lingering on hers. She should have been furious. He had humiliated her, dragged her into a world she never asked to enter. Yet the memory of his voice, cutting through that socialite's cruelty declaring she belonged, echoed inside her like a dangerous comfort. She shook her head. "Don't be fooled. He's the reason you're trapped." When the car pulled into the sprawling mansion, Adrian didn't say a word. He left her at the entrance and disappeared down a hallway. She expected to be escorted back to her suite, but curiosity tugged at her chest. Something in his silence had been different tonight. Not the cold indifference she had come to expect, but something heavier, like a man carrying too much weight. Against her better judgment, she followed the sound of his footsteps. The mansion was quiet, its marble halls glowing with faint golden light. She trailed him down a darker corridor until she reached a half-open door. Inside, Adrian stood alone in a dimly lit study. Bookshelves lined the walls, heavy curtains drawn tight. He had removed his jacket, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar, his sleeves rolled up. He looked less like the billionaire heir everyone feared and more like a man. His back was to her as he poured a glass of whiskey, his shoulders slumped, no longer squared with practiced authority. On the desk before him lay a photograph in a silver frame. Amara froze, caught between retreating and announcing herself. But his voice reached her first, low and rough. "You shouldn't sneak around in houses like mine, Amara." Her breath caught. I was just curious," he finished for her. He didn't turn, but there was no malice in his tone, only exhaustion. Gathering her courage, she stepped into the room. Her gaze flicked to the photograph on the desk. A boy, maybe 10 years old, with dark hair and haunting eyes. Beside him, a woman with a gentle smile. Adrian's mother, perhaps. "Is that you?" she asked softly. He was silent for a long moment before answering. "Yes. Before the world took everything it could from me." She looked at him, surprised by the rawness in his words. This was not the ruthless man who had declared her his bride. This was someone fractured, someone hiding wounds beneath steel. "Why do you do it?" she asked quietly. "Why cage yourself in this world of power and enemies? Don't you ever get tired?" Finally he turned, and for the first time she saw it, the flicker of vulnerability in his eyes, a pain so deep it had carved his soul into something hard. "Getting tired is a luxury," he said bitterly. "One I can't afford." Their gazes locked. For a heartbeat, the air between them shifted, no longer predator and prey, but two souls standing at the edge of something dangerous and intimate. Then, as quickly as it came, he shut it away. His walls rose again. He set the glass down, his expression returning to that unreadable mask. "Go to bed, Amara. Tomorrow, you'll need your strength." She opened her mouth to ask for what, but something in his tone silenced her. As she left the study, her heart twisted with confusion. For the first time, she didn't see Adrian Blackwell as only her captor. She saw a man haunted by shadows, and that terrified her more than his cruelty ever had. Chapter 10. The Threat Unveiled. The morning after the dinner felt strangely heavy. Amara woke to the soft rustle of curtains drawn back, sunlight spilling into her gilded room. For a fleeting moment, she pretended she was anywhere else, that she was free. But the golden bars of her cage gleamed too brightly to ignore. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. A maid entered, bowing nervously. "Miss Vance, Mr. Blackwell requests your presence in the study." Amara frowned. Requests? That word had never been in his vocabulary before. She followed the maid down the long halls until she reached the same study where she had glimpsed Adrian's vulnerability the night before. This time, however, he wasn't alone. Two men in dark suits stood near the desk, their posture rigid, their expressions grave. Adrian sat behind the desk, a file open before him, his jaw tense. When his eyes lifted to her, they softened, only slightly. "Sit." She obeyed, heart pounding. His seriousness was unnerving. He pushed the file toward her. Inside were photographs, blurry, taken at night. The images showed her leaving her apartment, walking to her old cafe job, even one of her at the library weeks ago. Her blood ran cold. "What is this?" Adrian's gaze darkened. "Surveillance. Someone has been watching you long before you ever set foot in my world." She shook her head, disbelieving. "That's impossible. I'm no one. Why would anyone? Because of me." He cut in. His voice was low, edged with fury. "You've been marked as my weakness. They knew before I did." His words crashed over her. Weakness? She wanted to argue, but the tremor in her hands betrayed her fear. Adrian leaned forward, his eyes burning into hers. "Last night wasn't just idle gossip, Amara. These people, Vivian, the others, they aren't simply cruel. They are predators circling, waiting for me to slip. And now they've seen you." The room seemed to shrink around her. "So what happens now? You lock me in another cage? Guard me until I can't breathe?" For a moment his mask slipped again. She saw the torment behind his cold exterior. "If that's what it takes to keep you alive." His protectiveness should have comforted her, but it only tangled her feelings more. He was her captor, and yet he was the only shield she had against threats she didn't even understand. The silence stretched, heavy with all the words neither of them dared to say. Finally, one of the suited men cleared his throat. "Sir, we need to move quickly. If they've made their move, the next strike won't be subtle." Adrian's jaw flexed. He stood, his presence filling the room. "Double the security detail. No one touches her." His voice was a command that brooked no argument. Then he turned back to Amara. His tone softened, though the intensity never left his eyes. You may hate me for taking you, Amara, but I will burn the world before I let them take you from me. Her heart thundered painfully in her chest. She wanted to scream, to demand answers, to tell him she didn't belong in his dangerous empire. But all she could do was meet his gaze, caught between terror and a traitorous spark of safety. For the first time, she realized Adrian's world wasn't just a gilded cage. It was a battlefield, and she had just become the prize. Chapter 11. The Escape Attempt. The revelation from the study had left Amara restless, her chest tight with a fear she couldn't shake. Surveillance, enemies, predators waiting in the shadows. It was too much. She had already lost her freedom. Now, she was losing her very sense of safety. That night, as the mansion settled into silence, she sat at the edge of her canopy bed, staring at the locked balcony doors. Her heart pounded against her ribs. She couldn't stay here, not when her life was suddenly currency in Adrian Blackwell's war. If I don't leave now, I'll drown in this world forever. With trembling hands, she slipped on a pair of flats she had hidden beneath her wardrobe. She pulled a shawl over her shoulders and crept to the door. The hallway outside was quiet, but she knew the guards Adrian had stationed were lurking somewhere nearby. She would have to be quick. She padded down the hall, every creak of the floorboards making her flinch. The mansion felt endless, its gilded corridors stretching like a maze designed to trap her. Twice she had to duck into alcoves to avoid passing servants. Finally, she found her way to a side door near the kitchens. Her breath caught. 2 guards stood outside talking in low tones. Their weapons gleamed faintly under the sconces. Amara's pulse quickened. She backed away, heart thundering, when she noticed another exit, a narrow servant's staircase winding down into darkness. Without thinking, she slipped inside and descended. The stairs were steep, her footsteps muffled by the musty air. At the bottom, she found herself in a service corridor that led to a discreet back entrance. She pushed the heavy door open, and the night air rushed over her, cool and liberating. For the first time in weeks, she felt hope. But she didn't get far. A shadow detached itself from the trees. A man dressed in black stepped into her path. His smile was sharp, predatory. Well, well. The Blackwell bride all alone. Amara froze, her stomach plummeting. His eyes gleamed with cruel delight as he stepped closer. He's more careless than I thought. Doesn't he know treasures like you shouldn't wander? She stumbled back, her breath coming in shallow gasps. Before she could scream, another figure lunged from the darkness, Adrian. His fist collided with the intruder's jaw, sending the man sprawling into the dirt. The sound of a gun cocking followed. More shadows emerged. 2, 3, maybe more. Amara's panic surged. She was surrounded. Adrian shoved her behind him, his body a shield. Stay down, he barked, his voice thunderous. Bullets cracked the air. Guards poured out from the mansion, weapons drawn. The night exploded into chaos, shouts, gunfire, the clash of steel. Amara huddled on the ground, trembling as Adrian fought with brutal precision, every move calculated and merciless. At last, the attackers scattered into the trees, retreating as quickly as they had come. Silence fell, broken only by the ragged sound of her breathing. Adrian turned to her, his chest heaving, a cut bleeding down his cheek. His hands were on her shoulders in an instant, gripping tightly. What were you thinking? His voice cracked with fury. Do you have any idea what could have happened? Her eyes filled with tears. I just wanted to be free. His expression faltered. For a moment, she thought she saw anguish flash across his features. He pulled her against him suddenly, holding her as though he feared she might vanish. His voice dropped to a hoarse whisper. Freedom means nothing if you're dead, Amara. She clung to him, trembling, her mind a storm of fear and guilt. For the first time, she realized the danger wasn't just in his cage. It was in the world outside, too. Chapter 12. The Confrontation. The mansion's halls echoed with silence after the chaos. Guards swept the grounds, their shadows flickering in the moonlight, while Adrian led Amara back inside. His grip was iron around her wrist, firm but not cruel, like he was terrified that if he let go, she'd vanish into the night again. He didn't stop until they reached the grand study, slamming the door shut behind them. The fire roared in the hearth, its glow throwing his sharp features into relief. Adrian turned on her, fury radiating from every taut line of his body. "What were you thinking?" His voice thundered, filling the room. "You could have been killed. Do you have any idea who those men were?" Amara flinched at his tone but refused to cower. Her heart raced, but defiance rose to her lips. "I was thinking I can't live like this, trapped in your gilded cage, waiting for you to decide what my life is worth." His jaw clenched, his fists curling at his sides. "Your life is worth everything, Amara." The words tore from him, raw and unfiltered. He stalked closer, his presence overwhelming. "That's why I can't let you go. Don't you see? The moment you stepped into my world, they saw you as leverage. You aren't safe anywhere but here with me." Her chest tightened. His words should have sounded protective, but they only tangled her heart further. "Safe?" Her voice shook. "Safe is freedom, Adrian. Safe is choosing where I belong. You've taken that from me." For a moment, silence fell. He stood inches away, the firelight burning in his dark eyes. Slowly, some of the anger drained, leaving behind something rawer, something almost broken. "I never meant for this," he admitted, his voice hoarse. "When I saw you that night, when you spilled coffee on me and didn't bow like everyone else, I thought you were just a distraction. But then I looked closer and I realized—" His hand hovered near her cheek, trembling slightly as if afraid to touch. "You're the first person who has ever seen me. Not the Empire, not the monster." Her breath caught. For once his walls were gone. No cold smirks, no ruthless commands, just a man bleeding honesty in front of her. Tears stung her eyes, torn between fury and compassion. "Then why keep me prisoner? Why not let me choose to stay?" His hand finally brushed her cheek, tentative, almost reverent. "Because I don't trust myself to survive if you choose to leave." The confession shattered something inside her. Her anger cracked, replaced by a tide of emotions she didn't want to name. His touch was fire and tenderness all at once, his eyes searching hers with an intensity that left her breathless. She should push him away. She should scream at him for stealing her life, for binding her to his dangerous world. Instead, she whispered, "You can't own me, Adrian." A ghost of a smile flickered across his lips, sad and knowing. "I don't want to own you, Amara. I want to keep you breathing." His forehead rested against hers, their breaths mingling, heavy with unspoken feelings. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to the two of them, their pain, their fury, their fragile connection. Then Adrian stepped back, breaking the moment, though his eyes still blazed with everything he hadn't said. "Go to your room," he murmured, his voice rough. "Before I forget what restraint feels like." Amara turned, her hands trembling, her heart racing with something dangerous and undeniable. As the door closed behind her, she knew one truth had become inescapable. She wasn't just his weakness, he was becoming hers. Chapter 13. The Breaking Walls. The night after the confrontation was restless. Amara lay awake in her vast, lonely bedroom, staring at the ceiling. The fire's glow from the hearth flickered against the gilded walls, but its warmth could not soothe the storm raging inside her. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Adrian's face. Fury and desperation, yes, but also something she hadn't expected. Fear. He feared losing her. And worse, she feared what that realization did to her heart. When dawn broke, Amara slipped from her bed, drawn by something she couldn't name. Her feet carried her down the hushed halls, past the portraits of Blackwells who had ruled this empire with iron fists. She stopped in front of the study door, her hand hesitating on the brass handle. She should walk away. She should keep her distance. But instead, She pushed the door open. Adrian was there, seated behind his massive oak desk, the weight of the empire pressing down on his broad shoulders. The morning light streamed through the windows, casting sharp angles across his face. He looked exhausted, his tie undone, his dark hair disheveled. Not the untouchable billionaire, but a man cracking under the strain. When his eyes lifted and found hers, something shifted in the room. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice low, rough from lack of sleep. "Neither should you," she whispered, stepping inside. His brows furrowed. "What does that mean?" Amara took a shaky breath. "You talk about protecting me, about keeping me safe, but you're breaking under it. You can't carry this alone, Adrian." For the first time, he looked away. His jaw tightened, his hands clenched on the desk. "That's the only way I know how to survive. Alone. If I let anyone close, they get hurt. You saw it yourself. The moment you stepped outside, they came for you. That's what being near me means." She approached slowly, her heart hammering. "Then stop shutting me out. Stop caging me. If you really want to protect me, let me choose how." His gaze snapped back to her, dark and searching. He rose from his chair, each step toward her heavy with unspoken emotion. When he stopped in front of her, towering, his voice dropped to a whisper. "You don't understand what you're saying." Her chin tilted up, defiant despite the trembling inside her. "Then make me understand." His hand reached out, hesitating just above her cheek before finally cupping it. The touch was gentle, almost reverent, so different from the ruthless man the world feared. His thumb brushed her skin as though memorizing her, as though this was the only moment that mattered. "I've built empires. I've destroyed men who crossed me. But with you..." His voice broke, hushed and raw. "One look, and I'm undone. You are the only thing I can't control. The only thing I don't want to control." Her breath caught, tears burning her eyes. For weeks she had fought him, fought herself. But here, now, standing in the raw center of his confession, she couldn't deny the truth she'd buried. He had stolen her life, yes. But somewhere in that theft, he had also given her something terrifyingly real. "Adrian," she whispered, his name trembling on her lips. And then, as if restraint finally shattered, he pulled her into him. His mouth claimed hers in a kiss that was fire and fury and desperate surrender. Amara melted into him, her hands clutching at his shirt, her body pressed against the heat of his. The world disappeared. The empire, the enemies, the cage. There was only him. Only them. When he broke away, his forehead rested against hers, his breath ragged. His voice was a plea, a vow, a confession all at once. "Don't ask me to let you go, I can't. You are mine, Amara. Not because I claimed you, but because I can't survive without you." Her tears spilled, but this time they weren't just from fear. She pressed her lips to his again, soft and certain. "Then don't survive, Adrian. Live. With me." Chapter 14. The Choice. The kiss had left Amara breathless, her heart thundering against her ribs as though it wanted to leap straight into Adrian's chest. She had never felt so seen, so consumed, and so afraid. Because passion could be stolen in a moment, but choosing to stay, that was surrender. Hours later, the illusion of stillness shattered. The study doors burst open, one of Adrian's men rushing inside, his voice taut with urgency. "We've intercepted another threat, sir. They know about her." Amara stiffened, her fingers tightening on Adrian's sleeve. He turned, his expression instantly hardening into the ruthless mask of the Blackwell heir. "How close?" "Close enough to breach the estate if we hadn't intercepted their signal." Silence fell, thick and suffocating. Adrian dismissed the man with a sharp nod, and the door closed again. But Amara could feel the shift in the air, the weight pressing down on both of them. She pulled away from his touch, her voice unsteady. It's me, isn't it? I'm the reason they're coming. Because I'm here. Adrian's jaw clenched, his eyes burning with conflict. They'd come whether you were here or not. My enemies don't need excuses, they need weaknesses. And now they think they've found mine. Her chest ached at his words, his weakness. That was what she had become. A liability in a world that thrived on power and fear. Then let me go, she whispered, her voice cracking. If staying here puts everything at risk, let me leave. He was on her in an instant, his hands gripping her shoulders, his voice low and fierce. Don't say that. Don't you dare say that. You think walking away will save you? They will hunt you no matter where you go. The only difference is, I won't be there to shield you. Tears blurred her vision. Her heart pulled in two directions. She wanted freedom, yes, but more than that, she wanted him. She wanted the man who had looked at her like she was the only light in his dark world. Her voice trembled. Then what choice do I have, Adrian? To stay here, locked away, a prisoner dressed in diamonds? Or to run and be destroyed by the same world you're fighting? The anguish in his gaze broke her. He lifted one hand to her cheek, softer now, desperate. The choice is not between a cage and death. The choice is whether you'll stand with me, beside me, not as my prisoner, not as my possession, but as my partner. Her breath caught. Partner. It was the first time he had ever offered her equality, instead of chains. Do you mean that? She whispered. Truly? His lips pressed against her forehead, lingering, reverent. I swear it on everything I am. I've spent my whole life building walls, Amara. But if you stay, those walls fall. For you, I'll burn the empire down if it means you breathe free. The fire crackled between them, the sound filling the silence that followed. Amara searched his face, saw the truth laid bare in his eyes, and felt her heart answer in spite of fear. Her hand slid into his, fingers intertwining. Her voice was soft but resolute. Then I choose you. Not the cage, not the empire. You. For a moment, Adrian just stared at her, like he couldn't believe she'd spoken the words aloud. Then something in him broke. Something dark. Something lonely. He pulled her into his arms, crushing her against his chest, his breath shuddering in her hair. You don't know what that means, he whispered, his voice shaking. But God help me, I'll spend my life proving you're safe with me. And in that embrace, Amara knew her choice was final. It wasn't freedom she craved anymore. It was him. Chapter 15. The Forever. The night pressed heavy against the windows, the city below glittering like 1,000 silent witnesses. Amara stood in Adrian's arms, her choice still echoing between them. She had chosen him, not the cage, not the empire, but the man beneath the armor. But the world wasn't ready to let them rest. A crash rang out from beyond the hall, followed by shouts. Adrian stiffened instantly, his grip tightening on her hand. Stay behind me. Before she could protest, the study doors burst open, a shadowed figure lunging forward with steel flashing in the firelight. Everything happened in a blur. Adrian pushed Amara back, meeting the attacker head-on, his strength and fury unleashed like a storm. The struggle was brutal, raw, the clash of survival itself. Amara's heart thundered, her throat dry as she watched the man she loved fight not just for his life, but for hers. And then, silence. The intruder crumpled to the floor, disarmed and defeated, Adrian standing above him with his chest heaving. The guards stormed in moments later, dragging the man away, but Amara barely noticed them. Her eyes were locked on Adrian, the blood on his knuckles, the fire in his eyes, the vulnerability buried beneath all that power. He turned to her, his voice ragged. This is why I can't let you go. Every second you're away from me, this is what I imagine. Losing you. Losing the only thing that matters. Tears filled her eyes as she closed the distance between them, her trembling hands reaching for his face. And do you think I don't feel the same? Her voice broke. Every time you walk into danger, every time the world tries to rip you apart, I wonder if I'll lose you. But I'm still here, Adrian. I'm not afraid anymore." For the first time, the steel in his gaze softened. He pulled her against him, their foreheads pressed together, his voice low and reverent. "Then stay. Not as my prisoner. Not as someone I have to protect. Stay as the woman I love." Her breath caught. The words she thought she'd never hear, the confession hidden beneath all his walls, finally laid bare. She smiled through her tears, her voice trembling but sure. "I already chose you, and I'm not turning back." The kiss that followed was nothing like before. It wasn't stolen or desperate. It was a promise, a seal between two broken souls who had found home in each other's arms. The fire crackled, the city lights glowed, and in that moment, the empire, the danger, the threats, all of it faded away. When they finally broke apart, Adrian cupped her face, his thumb brushing her cheek as if memorizing every detail. "You've changed everything, Amara. For years I believed love was a weakness. But you've made it my greatest strength." She laughed softly, resting her hand over his heart. "Then let's be strong together." He held her, his embrace fierce and unyielding, as though he'd never let the world steal her away. And in that warmth, Amara knew with absolute certainty that she wasn't a prisoner anymore. She was a queen in her own right, not crowned with jewels, but with a love fierce enough to conquer empires. Outside, dawn began to paint the horizon, the first rays of sunlight spilling through the glass walls. A new day, a new beginning. And as Adrian kissed her once more, deep and unrestrained, Amara realized she had found not just forever with him, she had found herself. Epilogue. Months later, the Blackwell estate no longer felt like a fortress. To Amara, it had become something else entirely, a home. The walls that once pressed in around her now echoed with laughter, the kind of sound she had thought she'd lost forever. The halls were still gilded, the chandeliers still glittered like captured stars, but beneath all that opulence was something new. Warmth. Adrian had kept his promise. She found him one morning in the garden, sleeves rolled to his forearms, his hands surprisingly gentle as he pruned roses. It was almost absurd. The man who once struck fear into boardrooms and rival dynasties now coaxing blooms from thorned stems. Amara paused at the stone archway, watching him with a small smile tugging at her lips. He looked up then, as though sensing her gaze, and the guarded man she had first met was nowhere to be seen. Instead, his face softened instantly, his lips curving into something only she ever saw, pure adoration. "You're awake," he murmured, setting aside the shears and brushing the soil from his palms. He crossed the path in long strides until he was before her, pressing a kiss to her temple. "I thought I'd surprise you with fresh roses for breakfast." She laughed, the sound light and unburdened. "You, Adrian Blackwell, in a garden at dawn? The world truly must be ending." "Not ending," he said, his arm circling her waist as he pulled her close. "Beginning. With you." Her heart fluttered the way it always did when he spoke like that, unfiltered, unafraid of showing the love he once considered weakness. Together they walked back toward the terrace where breakfast waited. The city stretched beyond the hills, alive with movement, yet it felt far away, unable to touch them in their quiet bubble. Adrian had made changes, stepped back from the ruthless pace of his empire, restructured his life so he could finally breathe. So they could breathe. Over steaming tea, Amara looked at him, sunlight brushing his sharp features, and asked softly, "Do you ever regret it? Choosing me over everything else?" His gaze snapped to hers, piercing and unwavering. "Never. Everything else was noise. You're the only thing that ever mattered." Her throat tightened, emotion swelling. She reached across the table, threading her fingers through his. "I love you," she whispered, not because it was owed or expected, but because it was the truest thing she'd ever known. Adrian's thumb brushed her hand, his voice low and reverent. And I, you, until my last breath. Silence stretched between them, not the heavy silence of the past, but one filled with peace. For the first time, Amara felt not like a pawn in someone else's story, but the heroine of her own. She had found freedom not by running, but by choosing love, and by being chosen in return. As the morning sun bathed them in gold, Amara leaned her head against Adrian's shoulder, closing her eyes. The world outside could rage and scheme all it wanted, but here, in this moment, there was only them, forever.
Thank you for staying till the end. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button, share and comment. We'll love to hear from you.